Welcome back, my midnight wanderer. Sink into the dark the way a raven sinks into the hollow of a storm cloud. With quiet certainty, with the soft folding of wings, with the knowledge that the night will hold you as gently as it holds its secrets. Let the noise beyond your room dissolve to nothing. Let the stale thoughts of the day loosen their claws. Let the dim glow of your screen be the only firelight guiding you deeper into the temple. If stories carved from shadow, stories soaked in war, love unspoken, prophecy sharpened in bone, help your pulse slow and your breath deepen, then enter. You are welcome here. Subscribe, Wanderer of Dusk, so these corridors of myth do not lose you when the dark grows thick. Leave a like to keep our torches alive, and in the comments, tell me where in the world you are listening from, and the exact hour the night reached you. Good. Now come closer. The storm begins. Before Cú Chulainn was born, before the clash of chariots and war cries shook the marrow of Ulster, before the Morrígan ever lowered her gaze to look upon the path of a mortal child, Ireland lived in a half-dream, not the soft kind that leaves the morning gentle, but the kind that clings to the air like damp fog after a night of omens. Mountains hunched like old kings wrapped in cloaks of shadow and moss. The hills rolled in slow waves, each curve holding a name the wind had whispered into it centuries ago. Forests muttered to themselves in languages that were older than oak. Roots wound deep through the earth, gripping secrets the way a fist grips a dying ember to keep it warm. Rivers coiled through valleys with a patient, silver determination, and if you listened closely, you would hear them murmur of past battles, of fallen warriors, and the gods who once drank from their banks. The land knew things. It remembered things. The soil still held echoes of footfalls that were not human. The stones carried scars left by beings who could slice lightning open and drink the storm inside. Time was a flexible creature then. Nights stretched long and languid, filled with the quiet breathing of spirit. Days glimmered like forged bronze, thick with magic that hummed in the bones of everything. This was Ireland, not the gentle green country sung by bards centuries later, but a land made half of hunger and half of dream. A place where every shadow had a soul, a place where every gust of wind carried an old promise, a place where the wrong step into a fairy ring could pull you into a century you did not belong to. The world was awake, and fate was stirring. Among all the gods and spirits who roamed this wild, waking Ireland, one name rippled through every whisper of wind: Morrígan. Not a goddess in the simple sense, but a force, a presence, a trinity shaped from war, sovereignty, and shadow. A storm wrapped in a woman's skin. She was the maiden, whose beauty struck like the first arc of lightning. She was the mother, whose fury could split mountains, and whose grief could drown armies. She was the crone, the ancient one, the keeper of endings, who saw through time, as though time were nothing more than smoke, shifting around her hands. Three faces, one force, always watching. Her voice could lull kings into madness. Her eyes could quiet a battlefield before the first blade even rose. When she moved, the air tightened, as though the world itself was unsure whether it should bow or run. Her beauty, when she chose it, was lethal, a softness sharpened to a blade's edge, a smile that could make a man forget he had ever lived a life without her, until the moment she revealed her teeth. Other times she appeared wretched, a figure cloaked in rags, hair wild as bramble, face streaked with mud and blood, and still she was terrible to behold. Because the Morrígan wasn't about beauty, she was about truth. The truth of war, the truth of blood, the truth of the future. She watched the dying with the tenderness of a mother and the coldness of a judge. Every cry on the battlefield was familiar to her. Every heartbeat that shuddered its last was a note in her endless music. But beneath her power was a bone-deep ache, prophecy. Prophecy was the thorn she could never pull out, the wound that never closed, the thing that made her both feared and feared for. And it was prophecy that called her to the ridge, the morning this story truly begins. The sky was dark steel, a blue so deep it hovered on the edge of purple, like the bruise left by a god's hand. Storm clouds waited at the horizon, curling around each other like beasts gathering for the hunt. The Morrígan stood barefoot on the jagged ridge. Cold stone bit into her skin, but she welcomed the sting. It grounded her in the fleeting physical moment. Before vision overtook her, wind lashed at her hair, whipping the shadow dark strands across her face. She did not lift a hand to tame them. Behind her ravens circled, not as birds but as extensions of her will. Dozens of black shadows riding the currents of air, listening, waiting. The ridge hummed under her feet, a vibration that wasn't sound, but something deeper, the trembling of fate, stretching too tight. "Show me," she commanded, the words slicing through the wind, and prophecy, that old relentless tide, rose to meet her. Her breath left her body in a sharp, startled gasp. As the vision seized her, light and shadow crashed behind her eyes, 1,000 futures compressed into the span of a heartbeat. A child born of mortal mother, sired by a being whose blood held the shimmer of God. A boy laughing like breaking sunlight, running like wind that refused capture. A young warrior, wild, brilliant, burning too fast and too fiercely. A man standing alone against armies, with the arrogance of someone who had never truly lost. A life, bright as a spark, and just as brief, and woven through every glimpse, herself, watching, warning, warring, always at the edges of his destiny. When the vision broke, her breath returned to her like a blade returning to the sheath. Sudden, cold, metallic, she whispered his name, a name not yet given, but already carved into the future. Cú Chulainn. The storm trembled, the ravens shrieked, the earth absorbed her prophecy like dry soil drinking blood. It was done. She had seen the boy who would shake Ireland. She had seen the man who would die by prophecy. And she had seen the exact shadow she herself would cast over every step of his life. Destiny had spoken. There was no turning from it now. Breathe now, wanderer, slow and soft. Let your tongue grow heavy. Let your jaw unclench. Let your ribs open like dusk unfolding across the horizon. You are sinking deeper into the story, not by force, but by gravity. The night holds you. Let the pulse behind your ears settle into a quieter rhythm. Let the images fade, just enough to leave space for what comes next. Good, now step with me into the world where a boy destined for legend begins to breathe. While the Morrigan's prophecy still echoed through the unseen threads of the world, a woman slept. Her name was Deichtine, and in her sleep she dreamed of a radiant man, wrapped in gold and thunderlight. He came to her not gently, not cruelly, simply inevitably, like dawn arriving after a too long night. His voice rolled through her like the rumble of distant hooves. His presence pressed into her dreams like the weight of a warm sun. And when she woke, she carried a child. Whispers passed through the households. Some spoke the name of Lug, the brilliant one, the warrior of many arts. Others said the dream was just a dream. But the child, Setanta, proved quickly that dreams and gods were often the same thing. He was restless before he could speak, strong before he could form memory, wild before he understood what wild was. His laughter shook dust from rafters. His tantrums rattled the bones of the house. His joy was a force, and his fury was a warning. Even as a toddler, animals reacted strangely around him. Dogs cowered, Horses pawed the ground. Ravens perched closer than usual, without fear. The air seemed to sharpen when he grew frustrated. A subtle tightening, as though the world braced itself for something yet to come. The Morrigan felt this disturbance long before she ever laid eyes on him. It rolled through the threads of fate, like a small tremor before a great quake. A whisper, a warning, a promise. Trees leaned their branches as if drawn toward him. Wolves lifted their heads to scent the air as he passed through the forest. Streams rippled without wind when he stepped near their banks. The land recognized him before the people did. Even the shadows, those soft, living things that gather under rocks, beneath doorways, behind the quiet corners of ordinary life, seemed to shift when he approached. Because the prophecy sworn on the ridge was not simply a vision. It was a stone thrown into deep water, and the ripples were already reaching him. Far away, in a place of smoke and silence, the Morrigan opened her eyes and whispered something between hunger and dread. Setanta grew the way sparks grow when they leap from a fire onto dry grass. Quickly, unexpectedly, dangerously. His childhood was not gentle. Children like him rarely have gentle childhoods. There was always too much inside him, too much laughter bubbling out of him, like water from a spring that refuses to be dammed. Too much rage when his temper snapped. A rage that made grown men step back without understanding why their instincts screamed, and too much energy, always too much energy. While other children tired, Setanta kept going, as though his bones held lightning, and his muscles were made of wind. He ran everywhere, across fields, through forests, into rivers, out of breath, only for the briefest heartbeat, before the fire in him rekindled again. Dogs barked at him, but did not dare get close. Birds startled late, as if sensing his approach only at the last second. Adults muttered, "He moves like the land doesn't hold him," one said. "He has the eyes of a young god," another murmured, with awe or fear. It was hard to tell, but the strangest thing was this. Setanta never seemed aware of the effect he had on the world around him. He laughed loudly, as if unaware that the hills echoed his joy back to him with a strange fondness. He shouted when he was angry, not noticing how the wind carried his frustration like a warning banner. He played without hesitation, unaware that his play already resembled training, that his games already carried the shape of destiny. Even when he was still small enough to sit on his mother's knee, Setanta moved with a confidence that did not belong to children. It belonged to fate, and somewhere deep in the wilds, the Morrigan felt every tremor of him, like a ripple traveling across the surface of time. When Setanta was still young, too young to be taken seriously by those who had grown hard from war, he wandered to the training fields outside Emanmacha. Warriors trained there daily. The air rang with the clang of wood against wood, the hiss of breath forced through teeth, the grunt of effort, the crack of spear against shield. Setanta stood at the edge of the field, watching boys older than himself as they hurled their spears, spun their shields, leapt through drills, with the grace of dancers and the brutality of soldiers. He watched them the way flames watch dry kindling. He longed to join. The want was fierce, a hot ache beneath his ribs. The boys ignored him at first. They knew him, of course. Everyone knew Setanta. The wild one, the strange one, the boy with too much inside him. But still he was a child. It wasn't until he stepped forward and challenged them outright that they laughed at him. "You'll get hurt," one smirked. Setanta shrugged. "I won't. You're too small. I'm fast. You don't know the drills. I'll learn." Their laughter grew louder until the moment he ran, not ran like children run, not clumsy or playful or careless. He sprinted like the wind itself was chasing him, like his feet barely touched the earth, like he was born already trained by the hands of something ancient. Before they knew what was happening, he was in their circle. They rushed him all at once, a show of mercy, to overwhelm him quickly and send him home unhurt. But Setanta moved as though he'd been doing this his entire life. He dodged blows before they left their arm. He twisted under spear shafts with uncanny reflex. He struck the ground with his hurley stick, smacking the slatar straight into the chest of an older boy with such force. The impact echoed. One boy fell, then another, not because Setanta meant to injure them, but because his body knew battle better than it knew childhood. By the end, he stood alone in the center of the field, breathing hard, eyes bright with triumph, while the others sat panting in disbelief. Word spread, it always does, and far away the Morrígan felt a shift in the weave of fate, a tightening thread, a pulse of something brilliant and dangerous. She turned her head though she was nowhere near the field, as if someone had whispered a name she had not yet spoken aloud. Strength attracts attention, and attention brings invitation. Soon after his display on the training fields, King Concobar Magnessa invited Setanta to accompany him to a feast at the home of Chulainn the smith. This was no ordinary feast. Chulainn was famed for his craft, his weapons sharp enough to hum, his shield strong enough to swallow the blow of a giant. His home was fortified, his hospitality legendary, and his guard dog, well, the Hound of Chulainn, was a creature of its own myth. Massive, unrelenting, bred to tear intruders into pieces small enough to be buried in handfuls. Setanta accepted the invitation eagerly, but children, especially children touched by destiny, lose track of time. While the king's party arrived at Chulainn's hall, and the fires were lit, and the ale poured, Setanta stayed behind on the practice field. He played hurling alone, hurling the ball so high and far that even the wind seemed to struggle to keep pace with it. He ran drills through tall grass until the blades brushed against his ribs like hands trying to slow him. By the time he realized the sun had begun to sink, the sky was already turning purple and ash-gray. He ran, not because he feared reprimand, but because his heart always ran before his feet. He sprinted through dusk with the confidence of someone who believed the world would always make way for his pace. But the world had its own rule. Inside the hall, King Concobar, careless with ale, careless with memory, forgot to mention that Setanta was still expected. Chulainn closed his gate, and following custom, unleashed his guardian hound. Setanta reached the hall just as the moon began to slip free of the horizon. He leapt the last ditch without slowing, and landed softly on the path that led to the gate. That was when he heard it, a growl, deep, low, shuddering through the stones beneath him, like something ancient waking. The hound emerged from the shadows, muscles coiled under a hide thick with oil-black fur. Its eyes glowed with the cold intelligence of a creature built for one purpose, to kill anything unfamiliar. It did not bark, it did not hesitate, it launched, a blur of teeth, weight, momentum, and fury. Most grown warriors would have turned and fled at the sight of such a beast. Setanta did not. The moment stretched, a strange, eerie slowing of time that often touches those whose lives are tightly woven into the fabric of fate. He stepped aside with a fluid grace that defied reason. The hound's jaws snapped shut on nothing but air. Setanta pivoted, his hurley still in hand, his fingers finding the smooth round stone in his pocket. By sheer instinct, the boy struck, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with the full expression of the raw force inside him. The ball hit the beast between the eyes with such crushing power that it collapsed mid-lunge. Skidding across the earth and lying still, the hall doors burst open. Torches flared, casting red-gold light across the yard. King Concobar's eyes widened. Chulainn's breath caught in his throat, and Setanta, standing above the fallen hound, looked up as if nothing extraordinary had happened at all. "He wouldn't let me pass," the boy said simply. Chulainn's grief broke the moment. That beast had been his protector, his pride, his companion in solitude. "You have left me unguarded," Chulainn lamented, his voice raw, and Setanta, unshaken, unashamed, utterly fearless, stepped forward. "I killed your hound," he said, "so I will be your hound until you've trained another." The hall fell silent. A child offering himself in place of a monster. A boy volunteering to fill the role of a guardian beast. It was honor, responsibility, courage, and more than that, it was destiny. King Concobar nodded, Chulainn agreed. And from that night forward, Setanta bore a new name, Cú Chulainn, the Hound of Chulainn. A child who replaced a monster, a boy who took on a title that would cling to him until his last breath. Far from the hall, the Morrígan felt the shift again, a tightening of the thread that bound her to this mortal. The hound had awakened. Some days later, as the boy wandered the open fields, a druid approached him. Old, weathered, eyes pale with the unfocused gaze of one who sees too much at once. "Listen well," the druid said. "Whichever boy takes up arms today will be remembered for all time. His deeds will become the stuff of bard songs and thunder. His glory will fill centuries." Cú Chulainn's breath quickened, that fierce bright hunger ignited behind his eyes. "But," the druid continued, "his life will be short." The boy did not hesitate. He held out his hand. A warrior placed a spear in it, and the wind changed. The ravens stirred. Threads of fate tightened, like harp strings pulled taut. From miles away, the Morrígan whispered into the gathering storm, "Foolish child, glorious child, you choose death before life has had its chance to choose you." But fate had no intentions of sparing him. He was the hound now, and the path of the hound is never long. From that moment on, the land behaved differently around him. Shadows parted as he walked. Streams stilled when he leaned over them. Birds did not startle when he approached. They watched, as though recognizing something in him that most children did not carry. His strength grew, his skill sharpened, his name spread, and everywhere he walked, fate rustled behind him, like the hem of a cloak. He grew, he trained, he fought, he rose, too fast, too brilliantly, too dangerously, and in the dark corners of the world, where gods whisper and ravens listen, the Morrígan felt destiny gathering speed. The boy had taken up arms. He had taken a name, he had stepped into prophecy, and soon she would step into his path, not as a vision, not as a whisper, not as a shadow, but as a storm. As Cú Chulainn grew faster, fiercer, burning brighter with each passing season, something else grew in the shadows. A presence, a watching, a hunger, older than Ireland itself. The Morrígan had seen warriors before, had watched thousands rise and thousands fall. She had seen bravery turn to arrogance, fear turn to madness, youth turn to ash, under the weight of prophecy. But this boy This boy soldier with destiny branded onto his breath stirred something she had not felt in centuries. Not softness, not pity, not desire, not in the mortal sense, but fascination. A recognition, like meeting one's own reflection in an unexpected mirror. He fought with an edge that could split storm clouds. He raged with the same feral intensity that lived in the heart of every prophecy she had ever spoken. When he moved, she saw echoes of the vision on the ridge, flashes of the child, the youth, the man, the corpse. Her own silhouette stood beside him in every future. She could not look away, so she didn't. She watched him from torn edges of storm clouds, from the treetops, where ravens perched with uneasy stillness, from the corners of battlefields, where shadows hung too heavy to be ordinary night. And every time he survived a fight he should have lost, every time he stood alone, against odds that would break armies, that strange ache in her chest intensified. Not love, not hate, something far more dangerous, possibility. The next morning rose raw and thin, as if the light itself was hesitant to touch the world. Mist lay over the ground in thick, coiling ribbons that clung to grass like the last shreds of a torn dream. Cú Chulainn stood in the river ford, the cold water swirling around his ankles, washing away the last trace of yesterday's blood. Every part of him hurt, his ribs throbbed, his thigh pulsed, his breath came sharp, cutting through him like tiny blades. But pain was familiar, a companion he carried, the way others carried lucky charms. He looked into the water and saw his reflection fractured, broken by ripples that refused to hold his image steady. It made him look like a boy being pulled apart by a dozen futures at once. He shut his eyes to steady the world. That was when he heard its footsteps. Soft, measured, too calm for someone approaching a wounded warrior. Cú Chulainn turned, and the mist parted. She appeared like a story, stepping into its first line. A woman, young in appearance, but only in the way the moon appears young when it first rises. Her beauty was not mortal beauty. It was carved from contradictions, soft but sharp, gentle but impossible to fully look at. Her hair flowed like dark river water over her shoulders, moving as though stirred by a wind only she could feel. Her skin glowed faintly, moonstone pale, but warm beneath its cool surface. Her dress shimmered with shifting color, greens, blues, blacks, like smoke catching faint light, like raven feathers turning under a dying sun. Everything about her was designed to disarm, to lure, to soothe. It was the most dangerous kind of beauty, the kind wielded deliberately. She walked toward him, as though the mist parted in reverence. The river reflected her silhouette with perfect clarity, as if even the water recognized something ancient. Cú Chulainn straightened. He did not know her, but every instinct tensed in his spine. "Warrior," she murmured, her voice warm and liquid, poured over steel. "Cú Chulainn." He stiffened. "You know my name. Who in Ireland does not?" She smiled, a small upturn of her lips that almost hid the shadow behind it. He lowered his spear slightly, a courtesy, not a concession. "This is no place," he said carefully, "for wandering maidens." If she was offended, she hid it with elegance. "I have come for you." She lifted her hands, empty, harmless, the gesture of someone approaching a wounded creature. "I am the daughter of a great king," she lied sweetly, the lie shimmering around her like perfume. "I bring you my love, my aid, my loyalty in war." She stepped into the river, the water wrapped around her ankles, curling like loyal dogs. I offer myself to you. Strength for your battles. Victory at your side. Cú Chulainn stared. In another life, a gentler one, a longer one. Perhaps he could have paused, could have questioned, could have softened, but he was bleeding. He was exhausted. He was carved from duty. His body ached with every breath, every shift of weight. The world was war, and he was the only shield Ulster still had. So he answered honestly, I have no time, he said, voice low, for love or comfort, not in the midst of strife. Something inside her face, something delicate and dangerous, cracked slightly, not much, just enough to reveal the storm beneath. She tilted her head, studying him, a warrior who refuses help, refuses victory. I need no help. A man who stands alone, she murmured, stands unshielded. I will fight as I am. The river shivered, as though recoiling. Her eyes darkened, the green deepening into something bottomless. And you reject my offer. I reject nothing, he snapped. I simply have no room for such things. It was the first wound, the sharpest wound, the one she would not forget. Her beauty sharpened, not fading but shifting into something with edges. Her posture changed. Her voice deepened. Her presence grew. The disguise thinned like a veil drawn too tightly over a storm. The air around her trembled. You refuse me, she whispered. I refuse distraction. You insult me. I speak the truth. You turn away my love. I turn away nothing. You turn away me. Her voice echoed, not with volume, but with power, as though a second voice, older and colder, spoke beneath hers. Cú Chulainn finally realized this was no mortal, no maiden, no king's daughter. This was the shadow on the ridge, the crow in the tree, the storm that watched him. This was Morrígan. Puckles. She let the illusion fall. Her hair darkened into ink-black rivers, pouring down her back like spilled night. Her eyes ignited with copper-green fire, alive with fury and ancient prophecy. Her dress twisted, feathers and smoke rising, falling, reshaping, as if 100 ravens beat their wings beneath the cloth. The river roared around her, recognizing its sovereign. Cú Chulainn took a single step back, not from fear, instinct, survival. She moved closer. You spurn a sovereignty goddess, she hissed. You reject the hand that could lift you to a throne of victory. I did not know. You rejected a goddess's love. Her voice cracked like thunder, sharp, splitting the air, carrying the sound of wars that had not yet been fought. I came to bless you, to aid you, to fight beside you, and you cast me aside like a child brushing away a fly. She leaned close, so close her breath brushed against his cheek, warm like wind before a violent storm. You are a fool, hound, and your foolishness will cost you dearly. He tightened his grip on his spear. I meant no insult. Intent, she spat, does not matter. Only outcome. Her eyes blazed with a fierceness that could unmake kingdoms. It will be worse for you now, for I shall go against you in battle. The river surged, as though bowing to the wrath of its queen. Then she vanished. Not softly, not subtly, but in an explosion of black wings. A cloud of crows burst into the sky, their cries slicing through the air like knives. Cú Chulainn stared upward, the last wing beat echoing in the hollow of his chest. The storm had chosen its side, and it was not his. The Morrigan's crows had barely vanished before the river fell silent. Eerily silent, as if every fish, every ripple, every leaf, refused to move in the presence of the promise she had made. Her threat did not echo. It settled, heavy, cold, final. Cú Chulainn felt it in his bones, a tightening, a shadow slipping beneath his skin. He did not show it. He never showed anything. Not fear, not doubt, not exhaustion. But the air around him felt different, charged with a warning only warriors touched by prophecy ever truly feel. He left the ford in silence, spear in hand, the cold river water dripping from his ankles, like the last remnants of a dream, turned nightmare. Above him, ravens circled high, silent and watchful. They did not cry out, even they knew what she had set in motion. Not long after, the world shifted around him again, the way landscapes do when destiny prepares to sharpen itself. The morning dimmed, clouds thickened, bruised purple-gray, like the sky had been struck. Ned's army approached the river ford, and with them, a warrior whose reputation was carved into every soldier's fear. He was no ordinary man, broad as an ox, seasoned as dried leather. His hands were merciless stone, his breath a hot steam, rising in the cold. He radiated death, the way fire radiates heat. Cú Chulainn stepped forward alone. Of course he did. He was always alone. The armies paused. The river held its breath. They clashed. Steel rang, like bells for a funeral no one had spoken of. Their feet churned the riverbed, sending splashes of silver water bursting into the air. With each violent collision, Cú Chulainn moved with the furious grace of someone half human and half prophecy. His opponent moved with the weight of a mountain. The clash was brutal, raw, a dance carved of instinct and sharpened rage. The water turned red in places where blades kissed flesh. Breath steamed from both men. The cold morning tightened around them like a noose, and somewhere unseen, a ripple in the air changed, as though a presence slipped into the world without breaking the surface. Cú Chulainn felt it, just barely, a tingle up his spine that did not belong to battle. He knew, without looking, without hearing, she had come. The river darkened, not with shadow, but with movement. Something slick, sinister, silent, slipped from beneath the rocks. An eel, but not a simple creature, not a harmless river snake. Her, the Morrígan, she had taken the shape of something cold and cunning, a creature built to twist and bind. The eel slithered around his legs, at first gentle, like the brush of water current, then tighter, harder. Coils clamped against his calves, dragging him downward with shocking strength. He stumbled, a rare, dangerous misstep. His opponent lunged, blade whistling toward his throat. Cú Chulainn reacted, without thought. Pure instinct, pure desperation. He drove his heel down with vicious force, onto the eel's writhing body. A sickening crack rippled through the water. The eel convulsed. A thin, sharp cry, not an animal sound, but a goddess's stifled scream, trembled through the water. For a heartbeat, the river tasted like copper. Then the eel vanished in a burst of bubbles. The Morrigan's pain echoed faintly, as though carried by the trembling surface. His opponent hesitated, eyes wide, sensing something greater than war had touched the battlefield. Cú Chulainn did not hesitate. He struck. The duel raged onward. For a moment, a strange, heavy moment, the river felt empty. Not peaceful, empty. Like silence before lightning. Cú Chulainn steadied himself, breath ragged, blood sliding in warm rivulets down his thigh. He knew she would return. Goddesses do not strike only once. Not goddesses of battle. Not goddesses of prophecy, and certainly not goddesses whom you have personally insulted. He braced. The river shifted. The sky dimmed. The second form came. The air split with a low, rumbling snarl. A monstrous wolf emerged from the mist. Massive, feral, eyes burning like tarnished gold through smoke. Her fur rose like jagged shadows, bristling with rage and wounded pride. But she was not alone. Behind her a stampede. Cattle thundered toward the ford, hooves churning the earth, horns slicing through the air with deadly force. The Morrigan had brought the wild with her. The river became chaos, spray flying, mud splashing, the thunder of hooves shaking the ground itself. Cú Chulainn spun, dodging horns, leaping over hooves, ducking under the sweep of a bull that nearly smashed his ribs. His opponent's blade found purchase, cutting across his thigh in a wet, stinging arc. Blood spilled hot into the water. Cú Chulainn's fury ignited. He grabbed a stone, the size of his palm, spun it with practiced force, and hurled it at the wolf. The stone struck her eye with brutal precision. The wolf yelped, a sound that pierced the air with eerie, human pain. Too human, a goddess's pain, forced through an animal throat. The cattle broke apart in panic, scattering across the riverbank, as though fleeing death itself. The wolf stumbled, shuddering, shrinking, then dissolved into a swirl of black smoke. But the air still held her anger, her humiliation, her promise of more. Cú Chulainn steadied himself, breathing hard. He had wounded her twice now. He knew what that meant. Deities do not forget wounds. They repay them. The river became too quiet. Cú Chulainn felt it, the same way prey feels the moment before a predator pounces. The air thickened, heavy, charged. Even his opponent felt it now, his gaze darting, spear trembling in his hands. A wind swept across the ford, low, warm, carrying the smell of wild earth and storm. The Morrigan was gathering herself, wounded, enraged, determined. Cú Chulainn tightened his stance. He whispered under his breath, not a prayer, just breath shaped by pure human stubbornness. Come then. The river answered before she did. She came as a heifer, but not the gentle creature farmers guided with halters. No, a red heifer, large, hornless, yet radiating a wild, unbroken ferocity. Her hide glowed like fresh blood. Her eyes burned with intelligence, too sharp for any beast. She charged. The ground shook, the air trembled. The river split around her in furious sprays. Cú Chulainn planted his feet, his muscles screaming, his wounds burning, his breath ragged. She barreled toward him, a living avalanche of rage. He waited, timing her approach with the instinct of someone who fought half by skill and half by prophecy. At the last heartbeat, he moved, not backward, forward, straight into her charge. He slung his stone with all remaining force, all remaining breath, all remaining defiance. The stone hit her foreleg, a sickening, cracking sound echoing across the ford. The heifer crumpled. A scream tore through the air, not a cow's bellow, but the raw, tearing cry of a goddess's agony. The sky darkened. The wind howled. Then silence, shattering, heavy silence. The heifer collapsed, fully dissolving into black vapor that drifted upward, like burnt offerings. Cú Chulainn knew what this meant. 3 forms, 3 attacks, 3 wounds. None meant to kill, all meant to weaken. The Morrigan had not tried to slay him. She had tried to break him piece by piece, to drain him, to wear him down, to tear at the threads of fate that held him upright. And the day was not over. Cú Chulainn staggered. His breath shook with the weight of exhaustion. His wounds stung with salt and iron. Every muscle throbbed. The world blurred at its edges, but he remained standing, barely. He turned to resume the duel, and saw his opponent staring at him, as though witnessing a miracle and a curse woven together. The man swallowed, The duel continued, but the Morrígan had done her damage. She had weakened him. She had marked him. She had begun the long, slow unmaking that prophecy promised. From the shadows of an unseen world, she watched him fall to one knee in the river, and she smiled, not with triumph, but with something darker, satisfaction, and a strange, unwanted ache. The war between them had only begun. When the battle ended, Cú Chulainn did not feel victorious. He felt carved hollow. His ribs ached. His thigh pulsed. His shoulder burned where his opponent's blade had skimmed too close. The river ford lay quiet, eerily so, as though it too was catching its breath. The world felt thinner, as if some immense presence had just pressed its face too close to the weave of reality, and then slowly withdrawn. Cú Chulainn dragged himself out of the water. He was young, too young for the weight he carried, but youth does not soften prophecy, it only sharpens it. The Morrigan had struck him 3 times. Not fatally, not entirely, but each wound held a strange lingering sting, as if the echo of divine touch remained beneath the skin. He stumbled down the road, each step sending a bright pulse of pain up his spine. The sky darkened with gathering clouds. Wind whispered through tall grass in a voice that almost sounded like laughter. Not kind laughter, knowing laughter. The kind belongs to someone, watching a mortal learn the shape of destiny, one wound at a time. He walked until the pain grew almost unbearable. Then, ahead of him, a figure appeared on the quiet road, a woman, simple-looking, unarmed, wrapped in a cloak that moved softly in the breeze. She stood beside a cow, a gentle, patient-looking creature, with a leather rope around its neck. The scene was almost pastoral, almost peaceful, but the world had taught Cú Chulainn that peaceful scenes are often just masks. He slowed, hand tightening on his spear. The woman watched him approach with an expression of mild curiosity, her head tilted slightly, like someone listening for a distant sound. When he stopped a few paces away, she gave him a small smile. "You're hurt," she said. Her voice was soft, warm, carrying the faintest lilt of concern. "Yes," he muttered. "Will you accept a drink?" she asked gently. "Milk," offered in kindness. Milk, a harmless thing, a common courtesy on lonely stretches of road. But Cú Chulainn hesitated. Kindness rarely came to him without asking for something in return. Still, he was bleeding. He nodded. The woman lifted a cup toward his lips. He drank. The milk tasted warm, rich, strangely soothing. It slid down his throat and into his veins like a whisper of calm. For the first time that day, his pain eased. The ache softened. His breath deepened. He blinked in surprise. "What are you?" he whispered. "Just a woman," she said softly, "who gives what she can." But there was something in her eyes, a flicker of copper green beneath their softness, a flicker he recognized. He froze. "Were you not healed?" she asked, her voice turning faintly sharp. He stared at her. "You," he swallowed. "You were the eel." Her smile did not fade, but her eyes flashed. "You hurt me," she said quietly. "And I hurt you," he replied. "Then be healed now." She offered the cup again, and because he was weary, and wounded and too tired to refuse, he drank. Warmth spread through him again, a strange humming warmth, not mortal healing. Something older, stranger. He wiped his mouth, eyes never leaving her. "You're the Morrigan," he said at last. The smile sharpened. "Am I?" "Yes." He stepped back. "You took the form of an eel." She lifted her chin. "And you broke my rib. You came as a wolf, and you struck my eye. You came as a heifer, and you broke my leg." Her voice did not rise. She did not snarl. Her tone was quiet, too quiet, the quiet that comes before storms swallow worlds. You hurt me, she said simply, and now I heal you. He stiffened. I did not ask for healing. No, she murmured. You never ask. You only take. She stepped aside slightly, revealing the cow behind her. The creature blinked at him with soft brown eyes. The rope in the woman's hand glowed faintly, an unnatural shimmer that no mundane rope should have. Return the cow, Cú Chulainn said, voice low. Do you demand that of a stranger in the dark? She asked softly. Her tone was amused, but the amusement was the brittle kind that cracks easily. Take care, hound, she whispered. Some names bite. The use of his title made his pulse skip. Return the cow, he repeated, or I'll take it from you. Her smile widened, a thin, sharp thing. A crack in a jar that leaks poison. Will you strike me, boy? I'll strike any thief. Her eyes flashed. Then strike. The night trembled, a low vibration shifting the air. For a moment, he saw wings behind her, not fully formed, not yet crow, not yet goddess, but something in between, something that shimmered like heat above flames. He blinked, and she was gone. The woman, the cow, the rope, the chariot, gone. The road fell silent, as if the world had closed a door. Then, a single sound cut the air. Caw. A crow perched on a gnarled branch overhead, black as pitch, feathers shimmering with an oily sheen that seemed to swallow moonlight instead of reflecting it. Its eyes glowed faintly red, not bright, not supernatural, just wrong. Wrong in a way that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. The bird stared at him with unsettling stillness. Cú Chulainn tightened his grip on his spear, the exhaustion of the day pressing hard against his bones. His voice was barely a whisper. Who are you? The crow tilted its head, its beak opened, and from its throat, not a caw, not a screech, but a voice unmistakably human, a voice unmistakably hers. You do not know me yet, hound of Ulster, but you will. The ground under his feet seemed to shift, as though reality itself leaned in closer. The shadows deepened behind the bird, thickening into a shroud that clung to its wings. Then, silence, deep, heavy. The crow launched itself upward, wings slicing through air like blades. A streak of black, swallowed by a greater black. Cú Chulainn stood alone in the quiet road, breath uneven, mind heavy. He had never felt so mortal, so young, and so thoroughly watched. The morning crawled in slowly, a wounded light dragging itself across the horizon. Mist clung to grass like remnants of the Morrígan's cloak. Nothing stirred. Not birds, not wind, not even the river. Cú Chulainn had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her changing forms. Eel, wolf, heifer, woman, crow. He saw flashes of copper-green fire in the dark behind his eyelids. He saw the river surging beneath her fury. He saw the wounds he had dealt her. He saw the wounds she had dealt him. He sat with his head low, mind replaying every sound, every shadow, every flicker of her gaze. Outside the shelter, the air shifted, softly, softly like a breath taken in the dark. He froze. When he turned, she was there, standing in the cold dawn, like a monument carved from the first storm the world had ever known. Her hair was a river of shadows, long, flowing, moving with a life of its own. Her cloak hung around her in tattered shapes of ravens, mid-flight, each ragged edge a frozen wing. Her face, beautiful and brutal at once, held the perfect symmetry of divinity and the terrifying stillness of war. She was every battlefield, every prophecy, every death that waited patiently for its hour. The ravens lined the rocks behind her, silent, a living chorus of wings and eyes. Death followed her like a loyal dog. Cú Chulainn rose slowly, muscles screaming. So he said softly, "It was you." She stepped toward him, not quickly, not threateningly, but with inevitability. "You insulted a goddess," she said. "You raised your hand against me. You questioned me. You threatened me." Her eyes gleamed with a cold, deep fury. "You," her voice cut sharper than any blade. "A child." He swallowed hard. "I didn't know who you were. Do you think ignorance protects you?" Her tone sharpened like a spear tip. "A mortal's ignorance is not my burden." The ravens behind her rustled their wings in unison, the sound like the shifting of countless spirits. "You should have shown respect," she continued. "You chose arrogance." He lifted his chin in stubborn defiance. "I fear no woman." "A mistake. A fatal mistake." Her expression froze, then cracked into something dangerously thin. A smile without warmth. A shadow without mercy. The air tightened. The ravens hissed, and fate, watching from afar, inhaled sharply. The Morrígan stepped closer. Their real war was about to begin. The light creeping across the horizon was thin and brittle, the weak shimmer of a blade before it has tasted blood. Cú Chulainn stood in that pale half-glow, wounded, exhausted, but trying, always trying to hold his spine straight before a goddess. The Morrígan stood opposite him, silhouette carved sharp against the quiet morning. The air between them felt stretched too tight, like a drumskin ready to split. She said nothing at first. The silence was deliberate, a weapon. Even the earth seemed to hesitate, as though unsure which of them it should support in the moment that was coming. Then, with the softest inhale, she began. "I came to you in gentleness." Her voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. It carried through the air with the weight of mountains sliding. "I came with softness, in the form of peace, in the form of charm." Her gaze sharpened. "And you turned me away." Cú Chulainn opened his mouth, but no words formed. Words were useless against beings built from prophecy. She took a single step forward, and the ground beneath her darkened, shadow spreading like ink beneath bare feet. "You rejected a goddess's offer. You rejected alliance. You rejected love." "I rejected distraction," he snapped quietly, though even he heard the brittleness in his voice. Her expression chilled. The ravens behind her shifted as one, their wings rustling like an army's whisper. "You mock me," she said softly. "You wound me, and then you pretend your choices carry no consequence." Her eyes narrowed. "You are a child." The words struck harder than any spear. Cú Chulainn's jaw tightened, but he did not drop his gaze. He never dropped his gaze. "I didn't know who you were," he said again, stubborn, young, aching. "You knew enough." Her voice dropped to a cold, lethal whisper. "Do you think ignorance protects you? Ignorance is the armor of fools." He stepped closer, pain in every movement but pride refusing to bend. "I fear no woman." A deadly mistake. Her face stopped moving, went still in a way that only divine beings can achieve. Then the stillness cracked, not like a smile, not like anger, like something much more dangerous. The thin fracture before a dam break. Her voice turned quiet. Too quiet. "So be it." The ravens behind her lifted slightly from the rocks, hovering in the air as if awaiting her next command. "You chose your path, with eyes closed and pride open, and now you will walk exactly where that path leads." He tried to stand taller, tried to mask the ache in his ribs. "I will walk wherever I choose," he said. "No," she whispered. You will walk where prophecy sends you. She raised a hand. Not in violence, not yet, but in revelation. You will be glorious. Her voice shook gently. Not with admiration, but with inevitability. You will split armies. You will tear through warriors, like a blade through reeds. Your name will shake the walls of kingdoms, not yet built. Cú Chulainn's heart thudded once, hard enough to echo in his ears. And you will die, she finished softly. Alone, young, watched only by the crows that obey me. The words sank into the morning mist, into his skin, into the threads of fate that were already reaching for him. He did not flinch. He should have. But pride is the sweetest poison. Mortals drink willingly. If death comes, he said, let it come when it chooses. I will not fear a prophecy. A faint smile lifted her lips, not amused, not mocking, tragic. You fear nothing. Her tone tasted of iron. And that is why you will die. She moved slowly across the rocks, bare feet silent, cloak whispering behind her, like the trailing edge of a night storm. Up close, she looked impossibly ancient, and impossibly young, at the same time. Her face was flawless, but her eyes held centuries' victories and massacres, empires risen and ruined, prophecies spoken and fulfilled. She stopped an arm's reach away. I want you to remember this, she murmured. Her fingers lifted toward his cheek, not touching, but close enough that the air between them vibrated. When you stand bleeding on the field, when your strength fails you, when the world closes its teeth around your throat, her gaze locked with his. You will wish you had accepted my hand. Cú Chulainn breathed in sharply. Pain, pride, youth, destiny, all warring behind his ribs. I stand alone, he said stubbornly. So you will fall alone, she replied. The morning wind shifted, cold fingers brushing the grass, like the touch of something unseen. Her cloak lifted in a slow spiral of black feathers. The ravens behind her rose higher, their wings beating in unison. The air smelled of iron, of storm, of endings waiting to begin. She extended her hand, not in peace, but in blessing, a blessing drenched in doom. I mark you, she whispered. Hound of Ulster, child of storm, beloved of destiny. Her voice trembled with something buried, something that sounded almost like pain. Every victory you taste will be bitter. Every triumph will cost more than it earns. Every enemy you strike down will carry a shadow that falls heavier upon you than upon them. Cú Chulainn swallowed, but did not back away. You cannot frighten me. Her expression softened, tragically. I do not need to, she murmured. Fate will. She lowered her hand slowly. I will stand at the edge of every battlefield you walk, she said. Sometimes in shadow, sometimes in smoke, sometimes in the feathers of the birds above you. She stepped back, and when your final day comes, and it will come, I will be there. He inhaled sharply. She watched him, not with fury now, not with scorn, but with the heavy certainty of someone who has seen the shape of a future she cannot unsee. Her eyes softened, just for a heartbeat. You will be magnificent, she whispered. Magnificent and doomed. Cú Chulainn's chest ached. The morning light flickered across his face, slicing his expression into bright and shadowed halves. He looked both older and heartbreakingly young. I do not ask for your prophecy, he said. No, she replied. You don't ask for anything. That is your tragedy. Slowly, she stepped back onto the rocks. The ravens parted to make space for her, their wings beating faintly. Her cloak gathered around her, like a living storm. You have set your path, she said softly. I will not stop you. Then her eyes burned copper green, bright enough to cut through the dawn. But know this, hound. You have earned my attention, and you will not lose it until destiny has taken all it is owed. The ravens lifted, a swirl of black wings and cold wind. The Morrigan rose with them, her body dissolving into a cloud of feathers that surged upward into the sky. Cú Chulainn watched as the flock spread wide above him, a living shadow, blotting out the pale morning sun. He felt the weight of her prophecy settle on his shoulders. It was not a burden he asked for. It was the only burden he could carry, and far above in the wings of every raven, the Morrigan watched. Their fates were now tied, not by love, not by hatred, but by inevitability. When the Morrigan vanished into mist, wings and thunder, the world did not immediately move again. It just waited. The river, normally loud, restless, alive, seemed to shrink into itself, its current quiet and nervous, as if carrying her echo beneath its surface. The trees stood unnaturally still, not swaying, not breathing, not daring to rustle in the wake of her fury. Even the air held a pressure that made it feel heavier to inhale. Cú Chulainn remained frozen, spear in hand, muscles trembling from more than exhaustion. He had faced men, he had faced beasts, he had faced sorcery. But this was different. This was fate reshaping itself around his spine. He could feel it, like invisible claws dragging through the threads of what his life might have been, and unraveling them. The silence pressed so hard against his eardrums that it almost hurt. Only after several breaths did the world begin moving, as though released from a grip it feared angering. The wind shifted, timid at first, then stronger. The river resumed its flow. The trees whispered cautiously. A single bird dared chirp far, far away, but nothing erased the truth. She had marked him, and that mark would follow him into every dawn. Cú Chulainn walked away from the river ford, with the heavy, surreal feeling of someone walking inside a dream. But this dream burned. His boots left prints along the muddy road, but each step felt as though he were walking through water, or through destiny, or through both. The cartilaginous ache of fear settled somewhere beneath his ribs, but he would never name it. He was Ulster's hound. He feared nothing. That lie had kept him alive until now. Yet now, his shoulders hunched slightly, not enough for others to see, just enough for him to feel. Every shadow he passed seemed to lean toward him. Every breath of wind seemed heavy with whispering. He looked over his shoulder once, just once. The road was empty, yet he could feel her eyes on his back, like the brush of winter air. Not hatred, not love, attention, the kind only a goddess or a predator ever truly gives. He knew she was watching. He didn't know from where, or in what form. A bird, a woman, a ripple in water, a sound in the grass. She could be anywhere, and she was everywhere, because that was what a curse was. Not a single act, but a presence woven into his days, like a shadow that refused to stay behind him. He walked the length of the valley and up the slope of a hill that curved gently like a sleeping giant's back. Mist curled around his ankles. The grass parted under his steps with uncanny softness. And then a raven landed on a stone, barely 20 paces ahead. Another joined it, then another. They did not make a sound. They simply stared, unblinking, still, cold. Cú Chulainn stopped walking. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. The ravens did not caw. They did not threaten. They did not flee. They watched. In perfect silence, 3 sets of black eyes, reflecting him like shards of some dark mirror. A chill touched the back of his neck, slowly, deliberately, He stepped forward. The ravens did not move, not one feather, but their bodies shifted slightly, all at once, as if controlled by the same pulse, a warning, a reminder, a presence. He passed them, not one took flight. He could feel their gaze on his spine, until the hill curved, and he disappeared from their sight. Only then did a single soft sound reach his ears. Caw, a quiet one, almost gentle, but it felt like prophecy. He reached the training grounds, where the warriors of Ulster were preparing for the day's duels. The clash of wooden swords, the stomp of feet, the barking of orders. But the moment Cú Chulainn stepped in, the noise dimmed. He looked different. Not physically, not visibly, but something in the air around him had changed, like smoke caught in wind. Some warriors glanced at the sky, others shivered. One crossed himself, because they felt it too, the Morrigan's shadow hovering over him. No one spoke her name, not loudly, but the whispers were unmistakable. She's taken interest. She's marked him. She was here last night. He's cursed. He's chosen. He ignored them, or pretended to. He trained with a ferocity that astonished even the veteran. Every swing of his spear seemed fueled by something burning beneath his ribs. Fear, pride, anger. No, not anger. Defiance. But even in the middle of sweat and roars and dust, he would sometimes glance toward the tri-line, toward the sky, toward the shadow, toward anywhere she might appear. He never admitted why, not even to himself. Throughout the battle that afternoon, the skirmish with raiders, near the rocky cliffs, Cú Chulainn fought like a man being watched, because he was. Every time he struck down an enemy, a crow circled overhead. Every time he staggered, another perched on a boulder and tilted its head, as though evaluating him. Every time he bled, even lightly, a faint coldness pressed against the back of his neck, as if her breath were tracing the wound, not with empathy, with hunger, but something else too. A strange, unspoken fascination. She watched him not just as prey, not just as a subject, but as a story she had begun and would finish. At sunset, as the last enemy fell, he looked down to see a raven feather in the crease of his cloak. Black, glossy, perfect. He had not seen it fall. He touched it. It felt warm. He froze. She was near. He returned to camp after the battle, his body aching, his mind heavy. The fire crackled. The warriors laughed. Meat sizzled over flames. But Cú Chulainn felt only the weight of the feather in his hand. He stood at the edge of the firelight, watching embers rise into the dark sky. Then, a hush fell over the camp. For no reason, no one entered. No owl hooted. No wind stirred. Silence simply claimed them all. For one heartbeat, Cú Chulainn shivered. He turned, and there, across the clearing, stood a shadow, tall, still, female. She did not step into the firelight. She did not need to. Her presence reached him anyway, curling around his spine, like cool fingers. She didn't speak, neither did he. They stared across the fire, across the crackle of flames, across the empty space, where fate itself seemed to crouch between them. And then, she vanished, like breath in winter. He was left alone, with the feather, the fire, and the unmistakable truth. The Morrigan had not finished with him. He tried to sleep. He failed. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her hair flowing into black wings, her green eyes burning, her cracked disguise, her half-tender, half-terrifying offer, her prophecy. You will regret the day you told me no. A raven cawed in the distance, just one. He sat upright. Sleep would not claim him tonight. Fate had arrived too early. Morning came gray and uneasy. Cú Chulainn stood alone beside the river, watching mist rise in slow spirals. He had begun avoiding the others, not intentionally, instinctively. People do not always understand when destiny begins to separate them from the rest of their world. He saw movement across the water. For a heartbeat, his breath stopped. A tall, slender figure stood on the opposite bank, barefoot, hair dark and long, cloak whispering in the breeze. Her silhouette was unmistakable. She raised her hand, not a wave, a greeting, a reminder, a promise. Cú Chulainn felt a cold tremor race down his spine. He gripped his spear. Her voice, soft, distant, carried on the wind, reached him. You feel it, don't you? He stiffened. Your doom, she whispered. It walks beside you now. The mist swallowed her. The river shivered. And Cú Chulainn finally understood. Her curse was not a moment. It was a path, and he had already taken too many steps along it. The next days unfolded with an unease that clung to Cú Chulainn's skin like damp cloth. He fought. He trained. He patrolled. He bled. Everything he normally did. But something invisible walked beside him wherever he went. He felt it every time he inhaled, as if another breath were being drawn beside his own. He felt it in the way shadows bent, in the way leaves turned when there was no wind, in the way ravens perched too close, too silent. He had lived with danger before, but never with destiny. Destiny was more patient, more venomous, and far more loving in its cruelty. Every night, he felt eyes on him, not hostile, not kind, watching, measuring, like a woman touching the edge of a blade she herself had forged. After the confrontation at dawn, after the prophecy had slipped from her lips like a blade drawn clean from its sheath, the Morrígan withdrew, but she did not leave. She lingered, watched, followed, not as a shadow, not always as a crow, but as presence, a quiet pressure in the air, a pulse at the edge of battle, a whisper of feathers when no birds were near. She had threatened him. She had cursed him. She had sworn to stand against him in war. And yet, something inside her pulled her back into the orbit of this mortal boy. Not love, not desire, more dangerous than both. Recognition. He fought the way storms fight, recklessly, beautifully, with an abandon that only those marked for early death ever display. When he leapt across river stones, her breath caught. When he hurled spears with the force of someone trying to tear open fate itself, she watched with a focus sharp enough to cut wind. When blood slicked his arms and his enemies fell before him, one by one, she felt something shift in the pit of her chest. Not softness, never softness, but a pull, a quiet, relentless pull toward the burning thing that was this boy's life. He moved like lightning shaped into human bone, brilliant, bright, but doomed to strike, only for a moment before disappearing. And she, goddess of endings and war, understood moments better than anyone. She watched him as he fought alone, against men twice his size, against beasts summoned by the other world, against exhaustion, against fate. Every time he survived, her fascination deepened. Every time he bled, her curiosity sharpened. Every time he roared a challenge into the sky, her heart, ancient, aching thing, lifted a fraction. The Morrígan, mistress of death, found herself unable to look away from a mortal child who treated death not as a fate but as an equal. She watched him from the curling edges of smoke, from torn pockets of shadow beneath chariots, from storm clouds that hovered too low. The ravens at her side shifted restlessly, their keen eyes following his every movement. They recognized something their goddess did not want to name. Not affection, not protectiveness, inevitability. This boy would be hers, not as a lover, not as a servant, not even as an enemy, but as a story, one entwined with her own, until the moment his thread snapped. And the more she watched him, the more she understood that his thread would snap brightly. It would be a death, sung for centuries, her domain, her specialty, her curse. But, even knowing all this, she stepped closer, stepped nearer to him than she ever should have. Not as shadow, not as crow, but as a woman. Late one evening, as smoke drifted from campfires, and warriors told stories to chase away fear, Cú Chulainn slipped away to the riverbank. The moon was rising, thin, pale, like a goddess's fingernail scratching against the sky. The water shimmered, then still. Then, a single raven feather floated downstream, not dropped, not blown, placed. Cú Chulainn tensed, the ripples parted, and a silhouette stepped out from behind a tall bent willow. A woman, not the Morrígan as he had seen her last, terrible, winged, glowing, with warlight, but something gentler, softer, ordinary, almost painfully mortal. Her dress was simple white linen, her hair braided to one side, her hands folded neatly in front of her stomach. She approached slowly, bare feet barely disturbing the grass. "Warrior," she said softly. He gripped his spear. "You again," he muttered. "No," she whispered. "Not the form you think." He studied her. Her face was new. Her voice was new. Her presence was. "You're her," he breathed. The woman smiled. A sad smile. A resigned smile. Yes, she stood before him, wearing no glamour, meant to entice a young man. No beauty designed to soften a goddess's edges. She carried a stillness that felt older than all the battles he'd won. "I did not come to strike you," she murmured. The river glowed faintly, as if responding to the gentler tone of her voice. "I did not come to punish." He breathed carefully, suspiciously. "Then why?" "Because fate is closing," she whispered. Her fingers brushed the bark of a tree as she passed it, and for a moment, the bark pulsed with green light beneath her touch. She stood a few paces away, close enough for him to see the emotion she was fighting to hide. Not rage, not scorn, sorrow. "Warrior," she said, her voice low, "you are walking toward a battle. You cannot win." He stiffened. "I've won every battle so far." Her eyes flashed, an ache inside them. "You have won battles," she said gently, "but not war. And war is what waits for you." She lifted a hand toward the horizon. "In the days to come, you will stand alone against armies meant for many men. I've done that too. This time is different." "How?" he demanded. She lowered her hand. "The curse has begun." She stepped closer, until there were only 2 breaths between them. "You think my words were spoken in anger," she murmured. He gripped his spear tighter. "Weren't they?" "No." Her voice broke on the word. "Just slightly, just enough. They were spoken in truth." He frowned. Suspicion warred with something softer in his chest. "Speak plainly," he demanded. She closed her eyes for a moment, as though gathering strength to reveal something heavy. "When I cursed you, destiny listened." The wind shivered. "I saw what your future held. I saw death, pain, isolation, glory drenched in blood." Her eyes opened again. "But I also saw something else." "What?" he asked quietly. "You don't reach old age." Cú Chulainn swallowed. "You don't grow white-haired beside a warm hearth. You don't watch your children grow. You don't lead armies as an old king." Her voice trembled. "You die young, Cú Chulainn," He inhaled sharply. She stepped closer. You died too soon. Her voice broke again. I've come to warn you. A raven cawed faintly in the distance. Not a threat, but a lament. She looked at him with eyes far too old to hold hope. You were not meant to walk so close to death this early. But you angered a goddess, and where gods are angered, fate accelerates. She lifted her hand toward his cheek, not touching but trembling with the urge to. You could still live if you would only. He stepped back sharply. No. She flinched, like a wound reopening. No, she repeated, voice hollow. I don't run from fate, he snapped. I face it. You don't understand. I don't need you, he said again. The words were a blade. She felt every inch of it. She stood very still, so still that even the river paused, as though afraid to disturb her. You are brave, she whispered. That I cannot deny. Her green eyes gleamed wetly, for the briefest instant, but bravery without wisdom becomes vanity. He exhaled sharply. I don't need wisdom. Her sorrow twisted into something sharper. No, she murmured. You don't want wisdom. A pause. A long one. The kind that hurts. You want glory, she said. You want stories written about the boy who never bent. About the warrior who fought alone. About the hero who never feared anything. He clenched his jaw. And you will get everything you want, she whispered. But you will die for it. He turned away. Leave, he said quietly. Her face broke. Not visibly, not dramatically, but deep. Do not dismiss me, she said, the faintest tremor lacing her tone. I have tried to help you, to warn you, to soften what is coming. He didn't look at her. You have nothing to offer. Silence, heavy, unbreathing. Then, her voice returned, soft, deadly, no longer sorrowful. You are right. He turned back toward her. She was no longer trembling, no longer gentle, no longer pleading. Her face had gone still, as carved obsidian. I have nothing left to offer, she said. Her eyes darkened, green swallowed by black. Only prophecy. She straightened. Her posture became regal, ancient, unyielding. You will die young, she whispered. Not because I wish it, but because you choose it. He inhaled sharply. You will die alone, she continued. Not because the world abandons you, but because you push it away. Her cloak stirred, though the air was still. You will die with your enemies surrounding you, and your friends too far behind. He tightened his grip on his spear. And I, she whispered, her voice a blade, dipped in sorrow, will be there. He stared at her, confused, hurt, angry, afraid. Everything he refused to name. You will stand above me, he said quietly. No, her voice cracked. I will stand over you. He lifted his chin. I don't fear prophecy. You will, she whispered. I don't fear gods. You should. I don't fear you. Her eyes flashed. You should have feared me when I came in gentleness. The river wind shifted around her ankles. You should have feared me when I came offering peace. The grass bent in a perfect circle around her. You should have feared me when I loved you. He froze. She stepped closer. And now, her voice dropped to a whisper sharp as iron. You will, a raven shrieked overhead. Cú Chulainn flinched, not outwardly, but inside. She saw it. A goddess always sees, and her expression hardened, then softened, then broke, then mended into something unrecognizable. I wanted your survival, she whispered. But you want your legend. She stepped back. The river pulled away from her feet, as though bowing. So be it. Her form shimmered, just slightly. the first hint of transformation returning. You will have your legend. The ravens gathered overhead, and I, she said, voice ancient and echoing, will have my prophecy. She vanished into feathers, mist and silence, and Cú Chulainn, tragically young, tragically proud, stood alone on the riverbank, while fate tightened its grip around his throat. After the Morrigan's warning, after her sorrow hardened into something ancient, Cú Chulainn tried to return to war as if nothing had changed. He trained, he fought, he killed, but something in the world had shifted around him. The sky seemed lower, the ground felt thinner, the air tasted of iron. Every morning he woke with the feeling that someone had watched him all night. Someone who knew his shape in every shadow. Someone who remembered the warmth of his face from unbearable proximity. Someone who waited. The Morrigan did not appear in person. Not yet, but she was everywhere. In the shape of a crow, on a branch, in the rustle of dark feathers overhead, in the curl of smoke around the fire, in the echo of footsteps behind him, on lonely roads. She haunted him with presence and absence, and the unbearable weight of prophecy. On the third day, the enemy cavalry descended on Ulster's lines, with ferocity that felt inhuman. The earth shook under the thunder of hooves and boots and chariot wheels. Metal flashed like pieces of the sun, ripped and weaponized, and Cú Chulainn, because he was always first, always alone, ran toward the front lines, without hesitation. His spear was a streak of lightning, his shield a drumbeat of defiance. He fought like a storm, made flesh, every movement sharp, every blow precise, every roar echoing with the hunger of youth. Warriors who would have hesitated, charging into such chaos, found themselves following him anyway. His courage was contagious. His recklessness was a spark, but even sparks burn out, and the Morrigan knew exactly when his flame would begin to dim. Near the midpoint of the battle, as blood slicked the ground, and screams tangled with steel, a crow landed on a fallen shield, not 10 feet from Cú Chulainn. It did not move. It just watched, its head tilted slightly, as though memorizing the exact rhythm of his footwork. Another raven perched on a broken spear, another on a body, another on a tree limb that had no business holding 3 birds at once. Soon the battlefield was lined with them, a silent parliament of black wings and cold eyes. No cause, no fluttering, just watching, just wait. Cú Chulainn felt them. He felt her. He fought harder, as if he could outrun fate by swinging faster, as if he could silence a goddess by killing enough men. But she watched with steady, aching, inevitable eye. High above the battlefield, in the body of a crow, with copper-green eyes, the Morrigan observed him, not with delight, not with hatred, with grief. Grief, sharpened into steel. He moved like a young god, furious, brilliant, carved from light. She saw every wound that hadn't healed properly, every limp he tried to hide, every wince when he twisted wrong. He was breaking himself to be legendary. He was burning his life to be immortal in story, and he didn't even know it. The Morrigan knew. She knew it so deeply that something inside her twisted painfully every time he struck down a foe. Not love, but recognition. This boy was the perfect tragedy, and she was the only one who could see all the pieces falling into place. When the enemy sent their strongest to flank him, a trio of monstrous warriors, with blades that hissed with sorcery, the Morrigan moved. She flew low, her feathered shadow slicing across the battlefield, like a dark omen. She perched on a shattered chariot just behind him. Her crow body shimmered faintly, briefly, with the outline of her true form. She whispered in a voice only he could hear. "You are dying by inches." Cú Chulainn swung his spear with brutal force. One enemy fell. "I am winning," he growled back. "You are bleeding," she whispered. "I always bleed. You are alone. I always have been. You don't have to be." His jaw tightened as he stabbed another attacker through the chest. "I told you," he snarled. "Leave me," she answered with silence, a silence that sounded nothing like retreat. She flew upward onto the branch of a tree that somehow remained standing amid the chaos. From there she spoke, voice echoing with prophecy's quiet tremble. "I told you your doom approaches." He did not answer. "You refuse to listen." Still nothing. "You refuse even now." He struck down a third warrior with a roar that shook the air. "You won't survive this path, Cú Chulainn." He turned suddenly, spear dripping, eyes wild. Her crow form met his glare. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His gaze said everything. "Try me." The Morrigan inhaled, a human gesture from an inhuman throat. Her wings fluttered once, and she spoke the first lines of the lament that would one day be sung across Ireland. "Greatness devours its children," she whispered. "Heroism is a fire that burns its bearer first." She watched him stumble slightly as blood pooled in his boot. "You would rather die bright than live dim." He tightened his grip on his spear. "You would rather be legend than man." He turned away, but her prophecy followed him anyway. "You will die young," she said softly, almost lovingly. "You will die beautifully." He swung his blade with rage that bordered on terror. "You will die with the world watching." He crushed a shield with his fist. "You will die with the ravens circling." A raven croaked overhead. "You will die with my tears on the wind." Cú Chulainn froze, just for a moment too small for any other warrior to notice. But the Morrigan noticed. She always noticed him. The battle began to thin. The enemy retreated. Warriors cheered. But Cú Chulainn did not smile. He stood panting, bleeding, hands trembling faintly. He lifted his head. The entire tree line was lined with ravens. Not one made a sound. The Morrigans spoke from somewhere within them. "You will not escape this, child of Ulster." The wind shifted. Cold brushed his cheeks. "You walk toward a death that has already chosen you." He threw his spear, a futile gesture, a cry of frustration against the shape of prophecy. It sailed through a cluster of birds. They scattered, but none fell. The Morrigan's whisper drifted down from above. "That is why you were always mine." Because prophecy had already wrapped its fingers around his throat. The battle had ended, but Cú Chulainn's doom had only just begun. In the days that followed, Ulster was bleeding, not metaphorically, not poetically, truly bleeding. Fields burned, homes splintered. Enemies advanced in waves that felt endless. Cú Chulainn fought everywhere at once, appearing where the line was weakest, disappearing before the enemy could regroup. He was a blur of steel, a flash of youth, a roar of defiance. But youth is not meant for constant war. Even gods can see that, especially gods. And the Morrigan, who watched him from trees, from rain clouds, from smoke curling over corpses, saw the truth long before he did. He was fading, not quickly, not obviously, but surely, a step slower, a breath shorter, a wound deeper. Every victory cost him something he could not regain. She saw every piece as it broke. One night, when the air smelled of frost and distant fire, Cú Chulainn walked alone down a path lined with yew trees. The branches arched overhead, like a ribcage closing around him. He was tired, not the tiredness of one day, but of many years crammed too tightly into too small a body. His arms ached, his scars pulsed, his breathing hitched in little sharp gasps, and for once, for the first time, he felt afraid, just slightly, just enough for the shadows to notice. He paused beneath an old yew, whose branches drooped low, dark as midnight water. There in the quiet, the world shifted, the wind stilled, the forest held its breath, and she appeared. Not as a maiden, not as a wolf, or an eel, or a heifer, not as a crow, but as herself, fully herself. The Morrigan stepped from the darkness, like the night pulling itself into human shape. Her hair fell in waves so black they gleamed blue. Her skin held the pallor of moonlight on bone. Her cloak flowed behind her in jagged shadows that resembled wings more than fabric. Her eyes, those impossible, sorrowful, copper-green eyes, watched him with a depth that made his chest ache, not with fear, with something stranger, recognition. He straightened, but barely. His legs felt too heavy, his body too tired. She noticed everything. "You are hurt," she said softly. Her voice was not cruel, not sharp, not mocking. It was almost tender. He inhaled sharply. "I can stand," he muttered. She stepped closer. Her presence filled the air like a storm wrapped in silk. "You are dying," she said gently. He flinched. She saw it. "I told you this would come," she whispered. "I warned you that your path would run out sooner than you hoped." He clenched his jaw. "I am alive," he snapped. "For now." He stiffened. "For now," she repeated quietly, "is a smaller thing each time you wake at dawn." He hated how accurate she sounded, how deeply she spoke to the ache in his bones, how clearly she saw through him. He hated it because he knew it was true. "You think me your enemy," she murmured, "but I am the only one who speaks truth to you." He turned away. "Truth," he growled. "You bring prophecy, not truth." "What is prophecy, if not truth spoken early?" He walked a few paces, trying to escape the conversation, but she followed, not threatening, not looming, just present. Present in a way that felt suffocating and necessary at the same time. "You do not understand," the Morrigan said softly. Cú Chulainn stopped walking. He didn't want to hear this. He didn't want her words pressing against the back of his skull, but he also couldn't walk away. Not from her. Not from this moment. "Understand what?" he asked, voice low. She stepped around him, until she stood before him again. Her face was breathtaking in its sorrow. "I did not come to destroy you." Her voice trembled faintly. "I came to help you survive." He swallowed hard. "But you refused my hand." He looked away, heart hammering painfully. "I don't need saving," he murmured. "No," she whispered. "You need everything that you refuse." She reached out slowly, as if touching him might shatter her. Her fingers hovered, just a breath from his cheek. "I did not seek to love a mortal," she said quietly. He inhaled sharply. "I did not plan for my spirit to stir when you bled for your land." Cú Chulainn's chest tightened. "But you," she whispered, "you burn so bright that even death turns to watch." He said nothing. He couldn't. "Your courage is a song the gods hear even in their sleep." She swallowed. "And your stubbornness is the stone that cracks the song." She dropped her hand. "I came to offer you a chance to live." Cú Chulainn stared at the ground. "If you turn back now," she murmured, "if you rest, if you heal, if you step away from war for even a handful of days." She stepped closer. "You might escape the death that waits for you tomorrow." His breath stilled. "Tomorrow?" he whispered. The Morrigan closed her eyes. "Yes, A terrible silence stretched. She continued, "Your enemies gather in numbers you cannot imagine. The river where you stand will soon run red. The sky will split. Your spear will snap. Your strength will fail at the exact moment you need it most." And then her voice broke. "Turn back now," she whispered. "I beg you." Cú Chulainn froze. He had never heard a goddess beg, not in myth, not in prophecy, not in life. He lifted his head. Her eyes were wet. Not with tears, with reflection, the reflection of his own doom. He exhaled slowly, painfully. "I can't turn back," he said. "You mean you won't? I mean I'm Cú Chulainn. You mean you are a child trying to be a legend?" He swallowed. Silence. Then he lifted his chin, eyes burning with the same tragic pride that had ruined heroes since the first story was ever told. "I will not hide." The Morrigan inhaled sharply. "I will not rest." Her jaw trembled. "I will not run," and that broke her, completely. "Then you will die," she whispered. She stepped backward, one slow, shaking step at a time. The wind gathered around her. Her cloak lifted, like wings unfurling. Her eyes burned, with a grief too vast for mortal understanding. And in that crumbling, heartbreaking voice, she spoke the prophecy that sealed his fate. "You will fall not by weakness, but by bravery. You will die not because you ran, but because you stood too long. Your name will echo for 1,000 years. But your body, your beautiful, foolish, mortal body, will hang broken before the sun sets on the next battle." Cú Chulainn felt tears sting the back of his eyes, not fear. Recognition. He knew she was right. He also knew he would not change. Her voice softened into a whisper that sounded like mourning. "And when you fall," she said, "I will stand over you. Not as your enemy, not as your lover, not even as your goddess," she closed her eyes, "but as your witness." The wind rose suddenly, cold, violent, curling around her like smoke. Her hair whipped in dark spirals. Her cloak split into raven wings. Feathers spiraled into the moonlight. And her final whisper reached him. "You should have listened when I came in, gentleness." She dissolved into a storm of black wings and vanished, leaving Cú Chulainn alone beneath the yew tree, with prophecy wrapped tight around his throat. Fate did not wait until dawn. It rarely does for those marked by prophecy. When Cú Chulainn opened his eyes on the last morning of his life, he sensed it immediately. The air felt too thin, the wind too still, the world too quiet. Death was walking, not running, not hunting, walking, steady, patient, like a companion who had finally caught up, after a long journey. He rose slowly. His body felt heavier than it ever had before, not from battle, but from inevitability. Scars pulsed. Old wounds burned. Fresh ones stung. He bathed in cold water that did nothing to wake him. He tightened his belt with fingers that trembled just slightly. He lifted his spear, the beloved weapon that had never failed him. He held it a moment longer than usual, not as a warrior, as a man saying goodbye. Then he stepped out into the morning light that felt like it had been dimmed on purpose. The sky was mottled with gray and bruised purple clouds. Across the valley, ravens gathered in numbers no mortal had ever seen. They perched along fence rails. They lined rooftops. They clustered in trees like hanging shadows. They circled above him, in widening rings. Not one sang. Not one cawed. Just watched, waiting, the way witnesses gather before an execution. Cú Chulainn ignored them, or pretended to. His chest tightened anyway. The armies of Connacht had assembled at dawn. Their banners snapped sharply. Their armor glinted coldly. Their formations stretched so far across the horizon that even the earth seemed to flinch. Hundreds, thousands. The Morrígan had warned him. Your enemies gather in numbers you cannot imagine. He saw it now. He should have turned back. But he stepped forward. One man against an army. Because Cú Chulainn had never known how to be anything else. A single raven descended from the tree line and landed on a post nearby. It looked at him with those copper-green eyes. Hers. He exhaled. Come to gloat, he muttered. The raven blinked slowly, not mockingly, not coldly, tenderly. A tenderness that did not belong on the face of a bird associated with death. He turned away. He couldn't bear it. He charged the battlefield with a roar that shook the bones of every man who heard it. His spear flashed. His blade sang. His war cry cracked the sky. For hours he fought like a god, like a creature who had stolen power from lightning itself. Warriors fell before him like wheat cut by wind. Steel clashed. Blood flew. Dust choked the air. He fought until the sun rose high, then until it began to fall, then beyond that, but with every hour, every swing, every wound, his strength bled away. Slowly, invisible at first, then unmistakably, his breath shortened. His vision blurred, his limbs pulled as though weighted. A cut on his side refused to stop bleeding. A blow to his shoulder made his arm droop. A slash across his calf nearly dropped him. He stumbled. An omen, another, each one a prophecy fulfilled. On a rocky outcrop, overlooking the battlefield, the Morrígan stood in her true form. Her cloak lifted in the wind of war. Her hair whipped like black flames. Her eyes glistened with something no mortal would ever believe a war goddess could feel. Grief. She watched the boy she cursed, the boy she warned, fight alone against the teeth of destiny. With every stagger he took, her fingers clenched. With every drop of blood he spilled, her throat tightened. With every wound, her own ribs ached, where he had once struck her in eel form. She felt his pain as if it were her own, because that is what prophecy does. It binds the prophet to the one she foresees. She whispered into the wind, "Not yet." But fate does not listen, even to gods. Near sunset, Cú Chulainn felt his legs falter. Just for a moment, just long enough. A spear struck his side, deep, too deep. The wound tore him open from rib to hip. His breath left him in a violent gasp. He dropped to one knee. The world spun, but he rose again by sheer force of will. He kept fighting, because he was Cú Chulainn, because he had promised never to fall on his knees in front of an enemy, because he knew the Morrígan was watching. He did not want to die on his knees before her eyes, so he stood, even as blood flooded his boot, even as pain exploded in his ribs, even as his vision darkened. He fought until his spear snapped. The Morrígan flinched when she saw it. Prophecy, fulfilling itself. Cú Chulainn staggered to a lone standing stone, beside a small twisted tree. He could barely breathe. He could barely see. His fingers slipped on the snapped shaft of his spear. He knew he could go no further. He knew the enemy would not grant him mercy. He knew he would fall, but not yet, not kneeling, not on the ground, not in surrender. He used the torn spear to lash himself upright, to bind himself to the standing stone, so that even in death he would remain on his feet. It was a warrior's defiance, a boy's stubbornness, a legend's final gesture. The Morrigan clutched her cloak, not with triumph, with heartbreak. As the sun died behind the hills, the battlefield went quiet. His enemies circled him, fearfully, slowly. No one dared approach. He stood perfectly still, bound to the stone, bleeding out silently. A statue carved from youth, war and inevitability. One warrior threw a spear. It struck him. Another struck his back. Another pierced his thigh. Blood trickled steadily. Still he did not fall. Still he did not kneel. Still he did not break. The Morrigan pressed her hand to her chest. She could feel every wound, as though it were her own. She began to sing. Her voice drifted, like smoke, over fields of dead men. Slow, cold, beautiful. A lament for the boy who never learned how to live. A lament for the hero who only knew how to die. A lament for the child who refused her hand. O hound of Ulster, bright child of battle, why did you choose the path that ends in blood? Why did you turn from me? Why did you refuse the hand that sought to save you? I warned you of ravens, and now they gather. I warned you of iron, and now it opens your skin. I warned you of destiny, and now it stands before you, dressed in red. Her voice cracked. You were the flame that burned too fiercely. You were the storm that broke its own wings. You were the boy who tried to outrun prophecy. And now your story ends. The ravens answered her. Their wings beat in slow, mourning rhythm. The enemy approached Cú Chulainn, very slowly, terrified he might still strike them down with his final breath. One brave soldier stepped forward and touched his shoulder. No response. Another struck him. He did not move. His skin had gone pale. His breath had gone quiet. His eyes stared ahead, at something invisible. A third warrior slashed at his legs. That did it. His body fell forward, or should have, but the lashings held him upright. He remained standing, even in death, as the prophecy demanded. The warriors gasped. The Morrigan closed her eyes. But before the warriors could step closer again, before anyone could claim the kill, a single raven descended slowly from the sky. It landed gently on Cú Chulainn's shoulder. It tilted its head once, softly, as though greeting him, as though saying goodbye. The warriors stepped back in terror. The Morrigan, one whispered, the Phantom Queen. They fled, every last one of them, leaving the boy to the goddess who had watched him die. The Morrigan descended in her true form, walking slowly through the bodies and broken weapons, her feet leaving no prints in the blood-soaked earth. She reached him, the boy tied to the stone, the hero, the tragedy, the child. She touched his cheek. He was cold. She whispered to him, as though he could hear, I warned you when I came in. Gentleness. She closed his eyes. I warned you when I came in sorrow. She lifted her hand. I warned you when I came in prophecy. She stepped back, and still, you chose legend. A single tear slipped down her cheek, dark, shining, silent. It fell onto the ground. Where it hit, grass would never grow again. She turned into a raven, spread her black wings, and flew into the night, leaving the Hound of Ulster standing in death, as the stories always promised. And now, Wanderer of the Night, the tale of the Phantom Queen and the Hound of Ulster comes to its final breath. The storm has quieted, the battlefield lies still, and the boy who ran toward destiny, faster than destiny could run toward him, has met the end that was always waiting. Even gods wept for him, even crows mourned him, Even the wind whispered his name, as it carried the scent of iron across the quiet hills. Heroes burn bright, and they burn briefly, but their stories outlive the body. So rest now in this softened darkness. Let the echoes of the Morrigan's lament fade into the distance, like the last embers of a dying fire. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders loosen. Let the world become lighter around you. And if you listen closely, somewhere beyond the veil, you might still hear the rustle of black wings passing overhead, and the whisper of a goddess singing a boy's name into the wind. Before you drift away completely, leave your mark upon this temple. Tell me where you're listening from, and what time the night found you. And if you wish to wander deeper into stories like this, subscribe and return when the shadows call again. Good night, wanderer. May the darkness keep you gently.